Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
But tell me, Eddie, is that a rabbit in your pocket or are you just happy to see me?
As the title suggests, or at least ponders, when will this travesty fucking end? Oh, this is a spoiler breakdown of episode 5, and while there is egregious lore breaking once more within this series, this episode's, I'd say, right up there, biggest sin is it was so fucking boring. It was a slog to get through. And I'm already pained enough as it is, watching, basically up to this point. It was a fucking slog to get through. It really only focuses on 2 main storylines within this episode. There are points where it does kind of the plot kind of shifts to a couple other things that are going on, like with Elrond and Gilgalad and Galadriel. But those are brief, and the thing with Galadriel is pretty much at the end of the episode, and it's really just to set up some shit that's going to go on in either the next episode or the episodes following, pretty much, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever what they're setting up with Adar and Galadriel. Like I said, I really only focus on 2 main, 2 of the storylines that are basically going on in this season, and that is what's going on in Numenor following the usurping of the throne by Ar-Pharazôn. And for those who, because I did not break down or review the first 3 episodes, just to kind of catch you all up if you have not been watching it. Basically, an actual lore. And I will say hello to the chat. In actual lore, Tar Muriel, okay, the daughter of Tar Palantir, is never able, she doesn't even get to her coronation, pretty much. So it's the whole idea that she's about to be coronated, and it's an eagle shows up, which effectively kind of shifts the tide within the room. Plus the revelation that Tar Muriel was using a Palantir as a means of getting advice, so to speak. Basically, Palantir basically shows you a possible future and so forth, which kind of turns the hearts of those in the room away from Tar Muriel, and the fact that an eagle shows up and doesn't eat Ar-Pharazôn, basically in that whole retarded scenario, basically was how Ar-Pharazôn gained the scepter, so to speak. Basically, they took that as a sign that, because an eagle didn't eat him or just kill him, it must mean that basically he's supposed to rule. It makes no fucking sense for an eagle to show up, period. And 2, it would never been that case, basically, because in actual lore, Tar Muriel is never given the opportunity to make it to her coronation because Ar-Pharazôn, her cousin, they make him look like fucking Father Time in this series, basically. They're supposed to be closer in age. They're supposed to be younger and closer in age. Right? Her cousin takes her as his bride unwillingly, okay? Basically, he forces her to marry him, thus basically gaining the throne, basically taking power that way. That's how it happens. That's how it fucking happens, basically. But, you have to have a whole retarded element to this series, basically. So basically it goes back to post events on after that, what's going on in Numenor, and then it also focuses on Celebrimbor and Eregion with basically not Anatar, aka not Sauron, helping him forge the Rings of Power. And it's already broken lore in that regard, because in actual lore, Sauron, under the guise of Anatar, helps Celebrimbor and the Elven Smith forge the 16 of the 19 Rings of Power. All right, that we know, basically, that other than the one ring, right, 9 that go to the race of man, 7 go to the dwarves. But Celebrimbor himself forges 3 rings of power, which are ultimately given to the elves. All right, and like I said, that's not just the lore breaking that goes on in this episode, because basically they turned that on its head, basically, and had Sauron's hand in creating the 3 rings given to the elves, which makes absolutely no sense because it's the influence of Sauron in the creation of the rings, basically, which is like kind of adds to the power given, like basically within them, that ultimately leads to basically corruption and manipulation within the races that like hold it. More so the men than the dwarves, basically. But that's the reason why. That's the reason why that those rings affected those two races in the way they did, whereas the three rings did not affect the elves in that way, pretty much because there was no influence from Sauron. They fucking upended that. So basically he's going to have influence on all the rings, and they're going to have to fucking explain away in a retarded way, and I'm going to keep dropping that word because this show is fucking retarded, in a retarded way, how the 16 rings, or the 9 rings, and mainly, basically, corrupt the race of men, basically, easily, but for some fucking reason, the elves are not influenced. Alright? Alright, but, you know, that's not the only lore breaking in this episode, because you basically see the forging of the 7 rings for the dwarves, and the beginning of the creation of the 9 rings. Fucking hell. But like I'll go into like the episode like where they're breaking the lore also with the rings, and then like in Numenor, big issue I have with Numenor was the fact that not only, like I said, you know, did they change the how Ar-Pharazôn usurps the throne, but also they finally mentioned the term the faithful. Now I'll go into what the faithful is, basically, because that is an actual term from Tolkien lore. But what I have a fucking problem with is a scene between the race-swapped Tarmariel and Elendil. Okay, I have a big fucking issue with that scene in general. But I'm going to say hello to the chat. Oh, I added a new clip, because you know, like they have member berries in these episodes, right? You know they have member berries in these episodes. So I got this clip. You all know the meme. So I got this. Whenever they drop a line, they say the thing. They said the thing.
Whoa, whoa. Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
Every time, like, every time, say, oh, they said the thing. He said the thing. Anyway, I'm going to say hello to the chat, and I'm going to bring up the episode. This is most likely will be like a slightly shorter stream because not a lot happens, but I will be going over where they like egregiously break lore. So from the top, I see Mr. Bentham. Hello, good to see you. Gravy D. I'd rather have ringworms than watch Rings of Power. I think most people would, arguably. And this, like, you are so fucking lucky you have a wrench right now, because I'm so tempted. I am so tempted to remove the wrench from you just to have my other mods time you out. But yes, Dan Blackroyd, thank you for popping in and just making the vein in my forehead just a little bit fucking bigger. Anyway, yes, but hello, Dan, good to see you. It's funny that you mentioned this, Gravy, because I went to go see the movie Speak No Evil. I saw that, and they showed a trailer for Agatha All Along before the movie started. So it's funny that you bring that shit up. But they showed a trailer for that. Dean, good to see you. Evening, everyone, or morning, depending on where you are. Yes, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. I don't know who's saying this episode is the best. It was, like I said, it wasn't as mind-numbingly bad as the previous episode, but it was mind-numbing in the sense that it was like so fucking boring. It's just boring. It was a slog to get through, like a literal slog to get through. No worries, Metalon. Hello. Zarb, hello. Lore break. Well, they're already technically like lore breaking that because they showed female ring wraiths, which makes no sense because the ring wraiths are the 9 men given rings of power. They're the ones that they become the 9 ring wraiths, or the Nazgul. But like they have female ring wraiths, and I call one Femme Shady because she looks like a fucking female version of Eminem. Halo Hound, good to see you. Of course, those fuckers are. Hello, Roxham. Hello. Scribe Light. Thank you so much. I'm making sure I say hello to everyone. Into that temptation. Yes, this is my throne. Yes. Anyway, so let me open the video. I'm not gonna touch on everything that happens in this episode, as I've stated in like the past live stream I did, because if I were to do that, it would take fucking forever to get through. So here it is. You like the title? Anyway. Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, I'll get into that. I accidentally made one of the Elven Smiths invisible. So thank you, Roxham. But anyway, okay, this episode opens up basically showing the 7 rings made for the dwarves. Part of the lore breaking in this is that the rings, if you look up basically, like, you know, because it's beyond the fucking writers and showrunners to even remotely do any research. Okay, but if you look up the 7 rings, while it is speculated Celebrimbor did give a ring to Durin the Third, and for just to backtrack just a little bit, there would not be 2 Durins at the same time. All right, do you want to have a little bit of a lore lesson? There would never be 2 Durins at the same time. It's not a name that's passed down. All right, it's not a name that's like passed down, like, you know, it's like, oh, like a father's going to give his son the name and, like, you know, add Junior at the end. All right, so Durin the Deathless. Okay, this is why there would never be 2 Durins at the same time. Okay, so basically, Durin the Deathless is the first king of the Longbeards, one of the 7 kindreds of dwarves, and they're the ones, primarily of Khazad-dûm, basically. So that's why you see the name Durin in this series, basically. So they dropped the name. So like Durin's folk, you hear that, like if you're watching the movies or you kind of like, reading up on the lore, that's where it comes from, basically. First king, Durin the Deathless of the Longbeards, right? As the founder of the greatest dwarf kingdom of Khazad-dûm, I call these dwarves Khazad-dûm. In the Misty Mountains, King Durin I is known as Durin the Deathless, though only in part because he's very long-lived. Tolkien's dwarves have a messianic belief, not unlike real-world beliefs about spiritual leaders, that each king who carries the name Durin is actually a reincarnation of the original father of the Longbeards. It's an article of faith among the Longbeards that this mysterious cycle spanning many ages will end only with the 7th and final incarnation, Durin the 7th, will appear at some undisclosed time in Middle-earth's future ages. All right? So that's why there would not be 2 Durins at the same time. It'd either have the king be named Durin the Third, or have the prince be named Durin. That's fucking it. But now you have King and Prince Durin in this fucking series. All right, that's big lore break that they started out with season 1. Secondly, the 7 rings of power, as I started to say, while it is speculated that one of the rings was given to Durin the Third by Celebrimbor, it's unlikely. It was most likely because the rings were given to the dwarves after Sauron laid siege to Eregion and took 16 of the 19 rings of power. Right, so Sauron took the 9 rings that were ultimately given to men after he sieged Eregion, and the 7 primarily after he laid siege to Eregion. Right, so this whole little fucking deal between Celebrimbor and the dwarves, all right, the way it's laid out here did not happen that way. Did not happen that way. All right. Secondly, the dwarves would have no fucking reason at all to believe anything from Celebrimbor, or to have any reason, even to save their people, because what happened when I think in episode 3, I can't remember basically. But there was a big boom that happened somewhere in Mordor that somehow made its way all the fucking way to Khazad-dûm, which basically impacted the shafts used to bring sunlight down into their homes. That way they could grow crops underneath, basically underneath the earth and things like that. So people were starving. I say people, dwarves were starving. All right, so and they were like their livelihoods were just gone. Okay, that's how the series set it up basically, and that's why ultimately they decide to trust Celebrimbor, like to save their people. Like Prince Durin doesn't trust Anatar basically, but ultimately he's convinced to convince his father to do a deal with the. Oh my god, Dan. All right, to have this deal with the elves. Like I said, it makes absolutely no sense because they have no reason to trust the elves because you gave the title of elf friend, essentially friend of the elves, to Elrond, which again breaks lore because Elrond, hey Multi, Elrond was not was never given that title. He never really worked with the dwarves. Celebrimbor worked with the dwarves because Celebrimbor was a craftsman. He was an elven smith. All right, he was an elven smith, and the reason, basically, is the reason why he developed a kinship with the dwarves because they were craftsmen as well. So he learned from them, they learned from him, and all that. All right, so if they had set it up properly, it would make sense for the dwarves to want to to trust Celebrimbor because they would have already established that relationship. They never did. So basically out of fucking nowhere, just because it's like they need to save their people, now they're going to trust in these rings given to them by these elves. Makes no sense. The storytelling wise makes absolutely no fucking sense. These are the 7 rings. Like I said, it looks like fucking costume jewelry. All right, looks like costume jewelry. Right, pans out. I'm like, if you look up people who do recreations of Lord of the Rings, whether swords or jewelry, they look infinitely better than this shit. Where is this $1 billion fucking going? I have no idea. It's definitely not into this. It's definitely not into this. But here's a funny thing that I found in this episode. So basically, Durin the Third is put on the ring, okay, and he can see where the ring allows him to see all the vast wealth within the mountain, and the mountain, which is kind of true. Basically, the rings themselves, the 7 rings, actually do give that ability to the dwarves, in a sense. But in doing so, it amplifies their greed. In doing so, it amplifies their greed, and so forth. Basically, it allows, like I said, it shows them all all the riches of the earth. Okay, it kind of amplified their natural skills, and they could kind of almost see where to dig. Okay, almost see where to dig. Okay, there's a part in this where Durin, he's wearing the ring, and he's telling them basically to use their pickaxes here at this point, and his son is trying to tell him that's I think the line is that's a foundation. You don't want to risk bringing chopping into that because you're going to bring down possibly rock onto us, right? Which makes sense because you don't want to kill your people, right? Durin the Third is ultimately proven right because it brings in the sun. However, see that line there? Are you explaining Delvecraft to me? Because the father is chastising the son in this scene. Motherfucker, you are listening to a piece of costume jewelry. That ring is telling you where to dig, not your skills, not your fucking skills. Entirely, you're listening to a fucking piece of costume jewelry. And you have the storytelling is the nerve to chastise his son. I mean, the dwarves all overall are stupid in this series. I mean, they take one of the best races in Middle Earth, one of the most interesting races in Middle Earth, and dumb them down almost for comedic purposes at times. Granted, they did that to Gimli a bit in Lord of the Rings, but not to this fucking extent. Like there's a scene later on. I'm not gonna really touch on that because the big thing about the scene was the fact that Disa can hear what sounds like a creature bellowing, which during the fourth calls an ancient evil. You know, which basically when he says ancient evil, it's basically this.
Whoa, whoa. Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
He said the thing. He said the thing. The Balrog, basically. You don't see the Balrog, you just kind of hear the bellowing, which is assumed she hears the Balrog. But basically, there's a scene where she's buying this tuning rock, or whatever she calls it, for her daughter, because her daughter's birthday is the week later. And like the whole scene, leading up to the part where she hears the creature, is she drops the rock that rolls down this hallway, and while she's trying to chase after it, it keeps getting kicked by other dwarves. And when she goes to get it, it just slips out of her hands until like it gets to like, you know, drops like down into this chasm area. Whatever it's called. I don't fucking care. But she's buying this stone, and like the whole scene is basically just done for comedic purposes. Like, you know, have a laugh. Have a laugh. Look, like, you know, the dwarves are kicking the stone. Disa can't catch it. Yeah, I'm saying it's like, you know, it's like there was comedic relief to Gimli, but not like to the extent that they're like doing to the dwarves in here. not to what they're doing with the dwarves in here. But anyway, like the father chastises his son. I'm like, motherfucker, you're listening to a piece of costume jewelry. But anyway, he's right, obviously, because like, you know, he's able to see essentially where to dig, which brings in the sunlight, so that way it saves the people. Or I should say it saves the dwarves and cause a doom. The only thing this fucking episode gets right about the ring, the 7 rings of power, is it amplifies the dwarves' greed. All right, the dwarves themselves, were very resistant to the magic of the rings. And when I say magic, the malevolent, the evil magic within the rings, basically like the corruption from Sauron's influence on the rings, they were ultimately resistant to that because of the fact that dwarves are harder to tame, essentially. Like they are very stubborn, harder to basically tame and control, and like whatever is in their hearts is hidden. All right, so they don't they don't wear their hearts on their sleeves, so to speak. All right, so it's like, so there's nothing that Sauron can influence with them other than their greed. Basically, like what gets amplified with the rings is their greed, which ultimately leads them to digging too deep, too greedily. You know, I said the thing, which ultimately releases the Balrog. All right, essentially what happens. That's the only fucking thing this gets right about the rings. Other than that, the dwarves, right, aren't given these 7 rings, right? Like at least in this capacity, they're not given to them by Celebrimbor. They are given the rings by Annatar, all right, Sauron in the guise of Annatar. So Durin the Third doesn't have access to all the rings, nor does he use them to basically enhance his greed by demanding 50% of whatever the other dwarven lords dig. All right, so basically, like this whole episode is like basically showing Durin the Third's greed, right? The amplified greed, basically, because like the ring he's wearing, which ultimately leads him to developing a ring tribute, even his own people, where they would have to give him 50% of whatever it is they earn. So basically, the ring brought socialism to Khazad-dûm. All right, as well as getting 50% of whatever the other dwarf lords dig up in their kingdoms. Never happened. Never fucking happened that way. Never happened. So I'm gonna skip forward parts a little bit because I'm gonna like cover like what's happening with the dwarves, and then I'm gonna cover what's happening at Numenor. I really want to. This dickhead here, I want to punch him in the face so fucking hard. You have no idea. I cannot stand this character. I want to cunt punch the little shit into the ocean. Can't stand him. Hey, JM. Can't. But anyway. We'll get into that. But basically, like I said, never happened. Nor did this happen this way, all right? For those of you who do not recognize the etching on that stone, that is the West Gate. That is the door of Durin, all right? Basically the West Gate into Moria that you see in Fellowship of the Ring. The door that appears in only starlight or moonlight, basically, because, right? Because of the fact it's inlaid with, how do you pronounce it? Ethildon, right? Which is basically like, it's like, it's which is developed by Celebrimbor, and it's inlaid in that, so that way the door doesn't show under like normal light. Basically, you have to wait until the like moonlight is out. That's the door. So that is the door. Where they're breaking lore here is that door, while yes, it was created by Celebrimbor and Narvi. Basically, Narvi is an actual dwarven character from Tolkien's lore. He's a craftsman. It was created anywhere from the year 750 in the Second Age to when Eregion was sieged in 1697. All right. It wasn't basically as a thank you for giving us these rings and saving our people. No, it was basically just made amongst the elven smiths and the dwarves because of, again, like I said, the relationship Celebrimbor had with the dwarves. Like that, the Celebrimbor was the friend of the dwarves. He was the craftsman. He was the one that should have been given that title in the series. So this never happened in this way. Never fucking happened in this way. Okay? And there's a line he says, which is not member berries, but it's a nudge, nudge, wink, wink sort of shit. All right? So he's saying, visible only by moonlight because of the Ethildon. All right? It's interesting that you say that because, that's the riddle. And guarded by a password known only to friends. Not a member berries line exactly, but it's nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Remember? Speak friend and enter. I heard, I saw, I'm watching this episode. I'm like, really? Fucking really? That's it. That is it. But like I said, it's not at all created in this way. It's not created as a thank you to the elves or anything like that. It was created by Celebrimbor and Nar, like basically the elven smiths and the dwarves. Okay, anywhere from 750 in the Second Age to 1697. There's no such set when it was actually created, basically. So, but it was made as a friendship, like basically because of the friendship between the elven and dwarven kingdoms. Because, well, if you're enjoying it, more power to you. I'm having an aneurysm. But there were periods of time in the Tolkien lore, all right? Because for most people, they only really know the movies, right? They only really know the movies, and I'm not holding that really against anyone. But they only really know the movies, and in the movies, it shows an animosity between the elves and the dwarves, which is true. There were periods of animosity between the two races for various reasons. All right, and it kind of stems to a prophecy, not a prophecy, but it's when the dwarves and elves were created, because the dwarves were actually created first by one of the Valar. All right, so basically, that there would be periods where, like, there'd be animosity between them. However, there were also periods of friendship between the two races where they actually worked together. They actually exchanged ideas, whether it's like basically traditions or goods and things, or like, you know, skills. There was a back and forth between the two races. So this door was actually created in a period where there was genuine friendship between the two races, mainly because of, like I said, Celebrimbor's friendship with the dwarves that like resided within Casa Doom specifically. All right, mainly because of that. They added the door for member berries. They changed its origin. They changed its reason for being created. But it's purely member berries. It's purely fucking member berries at this point, because there's no reason to have the door. And like, why is it even like on a stone in a Region? I mean, are they gonna like insert it in a hole in the wall on the west side of Casa Doom? I mean, how, like, you know, I'm saying, like, you know, it's like, how? I'm just wondering how they're gonna insert it, basically. But anyway, it's but there it is. Hey, Jimmy. Yeah, kind of like marriage. Yeah, basically. But that is like I said, that is actual lore in terms of the relationship of the elves and the dwarves. Most people know the animosity stage when you get to the Hobbit, the period of the Hobbit, as well as the the events in Lord of the Rings in the Third Age. But yeah, there's the lore when it comes to the Seven Rings. Okay, so basically, long story short, with the story of the dwarves within this episode, is during the Third, greed is amplified infinitely. And that's basically it. Like, it's influencing him in that way. Despite, you know, like his son is seeing it, and all the other dwarves are seeing it, but there's nothing they can really do about it because he's a king, right? And in this episode, Anatar convinces Celebrimbor to make 9 rings for the race of men, and Celebrimbor in this episode doesn't want to do it, even to save the race of men, because of how easily corruptible they are. Celebrimbor was never callous. Like, that is not the reason that he would have given for not wanting to create the rings of those rings. Like, you know, if he had given any reason at all, basically. But they're giving him characteristics that would have been more in line with Feanor. For those who don't know the character Feanor, really brief summation of his character. He's the reason why ultimately the elves made their way from Valinor to Middle-earth, because he, in his greed, in his pride, was basically hunting, tracking down Morgoth, Melkor, aka who becomes known as Morgoth, to get the Cimmerals back, the jewels. Feanor was greedy. He was a greedy fucking son of a bitch. All right, and I'm simplifying everything because I don't want to exactly go into an entire breakdown of that lore. But he was a greedy son of a bitch. He was selfish. He was arrogant. He was conceited. He was prideful. Ultimately, didn't care. He's the orchestrator of what was known as the kinslayings amongst the elves. He is not anyone that the elves would have at all respected, at all emulated. All right. Oh, haha, gravy. They would have not have revered him at all. There's no way Celebrimbor would even have Feanor's hammer, because Celebrimbor was the complete antithesis to Feanor. Where Feanor was selfish, Celebrimbor was selfless. Where Feanor was arrogant, Celebrimbor was humble. Basically, Celebrimbor distanced himself as much as he could possibly from both his grandfather Feanor and his father. All right, because his father was much like Feanor. All right, so he distanced himself from them. He wanted no part of that. He was nothing like them, and he left both of them. All right. So to have Celebrimbor give that as a reason. Now I'm not saying I'm not like the whole reason for the creating the 9 rings. There's like nothing fucking tied to at all to saving the men in the Southlands, like what happened, things like that. Nothing at all to fucking do with that. But for Celebrimbor to give a reason where it's like, I'm not going to help these people because I can't trust men not to be corrupted or manipulated or anything like that. Like, I'm not going to help them. Goes against Celebrimbor's him as a character. It goes against him as a character. If you're talking about the greed, I guess if you want to equate it to that, but basically it ultimately amplified the greediness already within them. Because the dwarves themselves were like deep down on the greedy side. I'm not saying they were entirely like selfish and greedy and things like that, but they were deep down kind of on the greedy side because they are in their halls of stone as per the ring, like basically the poem for the Rings of Power. All right, it's where they dug, Mithril, the Arkenstone, things like that. There was like a little bit of a greed for basically the wealth they could find with it, like in Khazad-dûm and wherever they lived already. The ring monumentally amplified it. All right, so while they could not be easily corrupted by Sauron's influence with the rings, the ring did do that, which aided Sauron in his quest to take over Middle Earth. So Sauron was able to use that in a sense against them, but he couldn't manipulate them. He couldn't entirely corrupt them because they were resistant to the magic held within the rings in that regard. So they were uncorruptible in a sense, but basically they were influenced by, if that makes sense, by the rings. They mined for jewels, gold, whatever they could. Mithril. So pretty much, like I said, it's like they did not that's part of the reason why there was a little bit of animosity. It's just because they were so much alike in certain regards. But yeah. But like I said, there were periods where they were on friendly terms. Even actually very friendly terms. And when I say that, I mean Celebrimbor and the dwarves. Okay. Well, that also, and the elves of Eregion, those were where the elven smiths were. So you have a craftsman within the elven race, and you have the craftsman the dwarven race, which you have that connection as well, among other similarities. So they were able to. That's where they were able to befriend each other easily, which is again why not giving the title friend of the dwarves to Celebrimbor in this series, but giving it to Elrond made absolutely no fucking sense at all. But yeah, in the first season, Elrond is one sent to kind of start talking with the dwarves, trying to get them to help. He is according to the fucking lore in this series, Mithril saves Middle Earth. Mithril is tied to the existence of the elves on Middle Earth. Mithril in actual lore is nothing more than a it's pretty. That's it. You inlay it in jewelry and doors. They even fucking used it in the chainmail, basically armor that was given to Bilbo by Thorin, then ultimately given to Frodo because of how strong it is. That's all. But they tie it to the existence of elves on Middle Earth, and that's the storyline in season 1. So Elrond is a friend of the dwarves in this series because he's friend with Durin the Fourth. Anyway, but that's like ultimately this like the dwarves basically. That's like the summation of like the dwarves. All right. Now here's where she hears the creature bellowing. And here's what's going on in Numenor. Okay, Farazan, he's a snake. Kemen, I want to punt into the ocean. Kemen is not even a canonical character. Farazan never had a son. Never had a son. And he was a lot fucking younger than this. But of course, they hire an actress who's aged up Tarmuriel, so they have to age up our Farazan. Yeah, not Kevin, Kemen. Kemen. He's not even an actual canonical character. Anyway, so what essentially you find, you don't hear exactly what our Farazan wants Kemen to do, but ultimately you can deduce that it's persecuting the faithful, the faithful within Numenor. All right, the faithful. Okay, this is like the first time I even remember hearing the faithful, like that term being dropped in this series, right? Okay, the faithful were Numenorians who were loyal to the Valar and the Iluvatar, basically God, okay? They were loyal, all right, in that, like, basically that regard. They, worshipped them, they, stayed true. And then you had basically, throughout the years, the Age of Kings, that the Numenor would, distance them, gradually, an animal, basically, and a resentment towards the Valar and Uvalar, grew amongst the kings of Numenor to the point where they would openly persecute the faithful. There was only one period of respite in that I remember, and that is during the reign of Tar-Palantir, and that the reason why there was a brief respite is because Tar-Palantir himself was part of the faithful, basically getting that faith from his mother. Okay. Yeah, pretty much. So, Valentine, yeah, close to men dead or alive. Yeah, it's the only reason that Frodo and Bilbo were allowed to travel to Valinor, the Grey Havens, was because they were ring bearers. They were given that special privilege, I guess, and for one of a better way of putting it, to travel to the West because they were ring bearers. They had they held the one ring at some point in their lives. So when it was time to cross over, they were granted passage. So yeah. Well, the Numenorians, at this point in the timeline, the Numenorians don't worship Sauron. That's not until basically Sauron tricks our Farazan into thinking that our Farazan has captured Sauron, and Sauron manipulates him into believing that it's the Valar and Iluvatar are false. Melkor is the real one you should be worshiping, and so forth. Happens fucking later in the timeline because Elendil shouldn't even be born yet. He even shouldn't be born yet. So if Elendil shouldn't be born yet, Isildur fucking sure as hell should not be born yet. They're not born until much later in the Second Age. Same with Tarmuriel. Right? These events that are going on within Numenor don't happen until much later in the Second Age. And they're happening now at the time when the rings are being created, which makes absolutely no fucking sense. But in this scene, what ticked me off was the fact that in the dialogue, Elendil flat out states pretty much that Tarmuriel was the influence of him becoming a part of the faithful. That was Tarmuriel that brought him into the fold. Didn't happen. The Elendil's name literally fucking means elf friend. That's what it translates to. Elf friend. Yes, exactly. It could have been their Game of Thrones. The corruption within Numenor was like you want to talk like you equated a Game of Thrones level of intrigue. Would have been perfect. But we get this shit. Well, because basically, like, they're worshipping Melkor. The human sacrifices are the faithful. Alright? So they're back to openly persecuting the faithful. Like I said, like, the faithful pretty much, if you look at the history of the faithful within Numenor, it emulates, it like mirrors what how Christians were treated during the Roman Empire. The persecutions and so forth. It very much reads like that in terms of how the line of kings, basically like the Numenorians have sided with the king, like the line of kings in that regard, how they treated them. Again, only one brief respite, only one brief calm within that, and that was during the reign of Tar-Palantir, and that's only because Tar-Palantir was part of the faithful himself. So hence Tarmuriel would be part of the faithful because of her father. Elendil was not influenced by Tarmuriel. Elendil was already part of the faithful. Alright? Because Elendil and his sons, Arnarion and Isildur, alright, are granted safety from the Valar when, like, basically, because they take ships from Numenor to Middle-earth, and they are granted safe passage by the Valar when Ar-Pharazôn tries to wage war against God. Like literally, Ar-Pharazôn's trying to wage war against heaven. And, like, surprise, fucking surprise, loses. Alright? But Elendil and his sons, they're the ones that found Gondor. So there is no port of Gondor at all yet, even though they dropped the name in this series. And there is no Pelargir at all founded yet as a safe haven for the faithful in Middle-earth. Right? Not just a settlement, it's a safe haven, as I mentioned in the last live stream. I hate this so much. You have no idea how much I hate this series. Alright? I believe it, Roxham. I believe it. But that was like one of the big things that I disliked in the Numenor story, at the very least. Like, they show the persecution of those. Like, see, they're actually not persecuting the faithful. But the reason given for persecuting certain individuals was the fact that they were still faithful to the queen. Which, again, is not the reason why the faithful were at all targeted. Not because they still were loyal to the queen, but because they were loyal to the Valar and the Iluvatar. That's fucking it. Nothing whatsoever to fucking do with any loyalty to the queen. Now, would there be some loyalty to the queen? I would say so, because she was supposed to be the rightful heir before Ar-Pharazôn usurped the throne. But it had nothing fucking whatsoever to do with just her. Nothing whatsoever to do with, like, being loyal to her. It had every fucking thing to do with being loyal to Iluvatar, the Valar, and Valinor. That's why they're persecuted. Nothing whatsoever to do with anything tied to this woman here, this not Tarmuriel. All these, like, so-called canonical characters, I call not Tarmuriel, not Elendil, not Isildur, not Gandalf, not Elrond, not Galadriel, not Gil-galad, not Durin, not Celebrimbor, not Annatar. They're not like the actual characters from lore. They're not. They're in name only. In name only. All right. All right. So basically, all right. I'm going to pause it here. Okay. So basically, like I said, Annatar influences, eventually gets Celebrimbor to start creating the 9 rings for the race of men. So, like, they do Celebrimbor so dirty in this series. They do him so dirty. They show him easily manipulated by Annatar. And I'm not saying necessarily he was perfect in actual lore. Like, you know, he was kind of seduced with the when I say gifts, I mean the knowledge that Annatar imparted onto the elven smiths. Right, he kind of was seduced in a sense by that, because he's a craftsman at his core, and whatever he can learn to hone his craft, he's going to want to learn. So he's going to kind of be seduced in that sense. But like, to make him like easily manipulated and to lie to Gil-galad, basically Annatar, I should say, not Sauron, tricks Celebrimbor into believing that the reason why the rings are affecting, in particular, King Durin, in a way it is because the 7 rings were created with deceit. And why were they created with deceit? Because Celebrimbor outright lied to Gil-galad. They made Celebrimbor duplicitous. They had him outright lie in a letter to Gil-galad. No worries, Trey. You have your pinned down podcast. No worries. All right, so they had him lie to Gil-galad. So not Sauron uses that against him and say, oh, well, probably the reason why the rings are affecting in this way because these were created under deceit. So it's very likely the reason they're going to give as to why the 9 rings corrupt the 9 men, and the 7 negatively influence the dwarves because they were created under deceit, whereas the 3 rings weren't. That were ultimately given to the elves, and that's not the fucking reason why. All right? The reason why is because Sauron did not help in the creation of those 3 rings. So there was no influence of Sauron on those 3 rings that were given to the elves. And the reason why they were given to the elves is to hide them from Sauron. Because when Sauron attacked Eregion in 1697, which is when Celebrimbor died defending Eregion, that's when Sauron got the 16 of the 19 rings. I know, yeah. And how he died, and like after he's dead, and like imagine this, chat, right? To kind of like quote how Lethal and like Moz are like chat, this is a crazy chat. Like they like mock XQC, crazy chat. After Celebrimbor dies, his body is strung up like a banner. You know, like you have those banners when like armies are marching onto to take basically lay siege to cities and so forth. He's strung up on like a banner before the army of orcs as Sauron is making his way through Middle Earth. Imagine seeing that. I'm like, that is Game of Thrones level of shit that we've seen on TV. Like, imagine that. Like, seeing Celebrimbor not only be the protagonist, but die a hero's death because he's defending Eregion. He's given the 3 rings to the elves to save them, all right? He's given those rings that he created. He's hidden them, all right? So Sauron does not know where they are. Sauron gets 16 of the 19 rings, all right, after he tortures Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor is not only killed, he's tortured He's tortured for Sauron to find out where the remaining 3 rings are. And Celebrimbor doesn't give up the information. Even under torture, he still resists Sauron to the point where Sauron, like, I have no more use for you, kills him. Imagine that. Imagine, like, have that be a badass end to an actual badass character in Tolkien lore. And to see what Sauron does to him afterwards. Imagine that. Imagine seeing that. That's how Celebrimbor goes down. Celebrimbor, he's not stupid. He's not stupid. He's not prideful. He's not easily manipulated. He's strong. Because elves are fighters, too. They have, like, barely shown that in this series so far, but elves are fighters. They can fight. We don't see that. Or we barely see that. The only one we see that is Wunderelf in Galadriel. That's it. That's all we've, like, pretty much fucking seen. I know. Well, I'm saying, like, in Rings of Power, because we see Legolas fight, basically, but in Rings of Power, the only one we've seen is Wunderelf. That's it. But elves can fight. I mean, Legolas, Thranduil, you see the, like, elves in actual lore do not at all go to Helm's Deep and Two Towers. But you see them fight in Two Towers in the movies. Alright? You see the last alliance of elves and men that ends the Second Age and begins the Third Age when Isildur chops the ring off of Sauron's hand, effectively defeating Sauron. Imagine if they actually did a show that showed the actual lore. Can you, like, imagine that? Like, the actual lore within the Second Age. If they had actually gotten the rights to the Second Age, because they lied about that. They fucking lied about that right to our faces for the longest time. Elrond was the commander of the armies, not Galadriel. He was made commander of the army. Galadriel was basically, like, sitting pretty. She wasn't a warrior. She wanted to, like, Galadriel was, like, so powerful. Like, she was actually older than the First Age. She was so powerful, she did not need to pick up a sword. That's beneath her. Alright? And I'm not saying Elrond is, like, not powerful at all. Like, he is. Alright? He is pretty powerful himself. Alright? But he doesn't really hold a candle to Galadriel in terms of that. So he fights. So he fights with. He even tries to get to Region in time. Doesn't. But there it is. But anyway, I kind of want to play this part because in this scene, or, like, you know, this is like we're getting to, like, this is like halfway through the episode. And they're beginning forging the 9 rings, all right? And this chick here, who is not canonical at fucking all in Tolkien lore, I can't even remember her name. It begins with an M. She's not canonical. You don't need to fucking worry about her character. She's one of the Elven Smiths, all right? She puts on one of the rings for resizing, okay? Just think, like, you know, for the resizing elements in the creation. It turns her invisible. It turns her invisible. Okay? I know it's a requirement. I'm just saying. But yet again, like, you know, it's like I say the same things that men are saying, and I'm ignored. Or I'm accused of having internalized misogyny. Because I'm saying the same critical things of the show that others are saying, that men are saying, but they focus their ire on men for saying this exact thing, and I'm agreeing with this. I don't want a girl boss. I don't need a girl boss. I want a good character. Celebrimbor would have been that character. He would have... Finrod would have been a badass character to show. Finrod. Again, chats. Again. Okay? Not going to the entirety of the lore surrounding Finrod, Fingolfin, brother of one of the brothers of Galadriel, who, when saving Beren from a werewolf, right? Because they were on the Isle of Werewolves, okay? And song is the element of song in Middle Earth is very powerful. All right, when I equate it to a rap battle, I'm being facetious, basically. But Sauron and Finrod basically like recited songs, basically poems and things like that, because of how powerful those were, like how much power were within those words. They were gauging. They didn't know who the other was, but they were gauging each other's power level within song and poem. All right, okay. Essentially, facetiously, a rap battle, essentially. But anyway, and throughout what was going on, anyway, and throughout what was going on, the men that were with Beren and Finrod, Beren and Luthien, well, call me a troll. I mean, one of the fucking showrunners called us trolls. The men are one at a time dispatched and eaten by the werewolves, okay? Until it's down to Finrod and Beren. Okay, it's down to just those two. The werewolf goes for Beren, and when it's doing so, Finrod breaks his chains. All right, he finds the strength with this in him to break free of his restraints, and he kills the werewolf barehanded. Finrod himself is mortally wounded in the fight and dies as a result later, but he kills a werewolf with his bare fucking hands to save Beren because of the promise Finrod made to Beren's father. Imagine seeing that if they actually had rights to second age lore. Imagine seeing that. Killed him with his bare hands. Anyway, back to this shit. So she puts a ring on that turns her invisible. All right, and again, chat, again.
Whoop. Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. All right, she says, I was in a place like this, but shrouded in mist and darkness. Oh, you mean like what Frodo sees when he puts on the One Ring? You mean like this whole little scene right here is going to give Anantar the idea of what to do with the One Ring? You mean this chick here is going to give Anantar the idea, essentially? Sauron the idea of how to, what to do with the One Ring? Shrouded in mist and darkness. I saw... Come on, spit it out, chick. Right, so at first I thought it was the forge burning. Right, so she thought she was looking at that thing. This is what she describes. It was tall. Alright? Yeah, get away from her, you bitch. Yeah. Stay away from her, you bitch. Or whatever, get away. Whatever. It's like the member berries lines. They always want to fucking drop. It was tall. and its skin was made of flames. Okay, skin was made of flames. It came toward me, breathing, reeking of death. All right. I saw its eyes. And eternal. What she says here, next, I think it's been here. It's been here among us all along. Who the fuck could she be talking about? I wonder what she's talking about. But basically, like, the gist is she's seen the other world. You know, like whenever the ring is put on in like the movies. Okay, and like what Frodo sees, like when the Nazgul are approaching Frodo and he puts the ring on, he thinks I'll turn myself invisible and they won't be able to see me. And the shocker, they can see him because they themselves aren't they're not human. They are ghosts, and so they can see even when you turn invisible because of like the corruption of the rings and so forth, and they're enslaved to Sauron. And you see their actual forms. Fucking is like essentially what she's talking about. I don't think she's describing really any one thing other than like basically just giving an indication of like member berries again of like, remember what Frodo sees whenever he puts the one ring on? Remember all that? It's essentially what it is. That's pretty much what it is. So, oh yeah, this scene here, they're like performing a ceremony, basically for the souls lost. So like, you know, lighting a candle, releasing it in the water for those who have died, because Elendil thinks Isildur is dead. Hey, gaming. So they're performing this ceremony here. The prick comes, tells him, like, you know, basically that that they what does he say here? He is such a punchable face. He has such a punchable face. Basically, like, you know, like this ceremony is outlawed. Basically, like, no more. They can't do this. Okay, it's banned by orders of the king. All right. This episode also is very fucking dark in the cinematography. Like, there's barely any scenes where there's any type of light. I know. But in terms of cinematography in this episode, it was so dark. And not, like, I'm not talking about tone, I'm talking about, like, I could barely see what was going on half the time. There was barely any light. The only light in the scenes that we saw were when Elrond somehow made it all the way back to Lindon from close to Eregion to try to warn Gil-galad. And then later at the end of this episode, where we see Wonder Elf has been captured by the orcs. When I say Wonder Elf, I mean Galadriel Karen. I don't know. Or they think they're being artsy. I don't know. It might be just a creative thing, which ended up being retarded in terms of like how they filmed it. But I don't think it was to hide the CGI, because there really wasn't scenes that were like where CGI would have been like, at least a lot of CGI would have been used. I think it's just basically, hey, let's be art, like basically let's like, you know, it's like, oh, it's like, let's just have it like, you know, will film this in the dark. They're like, it's like they're like doing the ceremony at night because they're not allowed to and they're caught, sort of situation. I'm like, whatever. But then again, like there's like barely any torches lit, so you can't see anything. Anyway, this whole scene basically is like, Elendil ends up being arrested because he punches Kemen. And this guy here, where's his face? One of Isildur's friends, nearly kills Kemen. And when he's told to put down his sword by Elendil, basically, not like basically Elendil's like, like don't do it. Kemen kills this guy here. That's it. That's the basically big thing that happens in this scene. The faithful are being persecuted, not because they're part of the faithful, at least not the implication in this episode, but because they're loyal to the queen. Right, so they're being persecuted. Their ceremonies are being banned. And then Elendil's arrested, and this guy is killed. That's it. And this whole entire scene that you could of what you can see, that's the gist of this scene. That's it. And okay, this is where it like ends. We see Galadriel has been captured by the orcs. We saw it at the end of the last episode that she was going to be captured. And the only thing I'll say about this scene, you'll love this. Adar proposes an alliance between the orcs and the elves because they have a common enemy. Well, non-canonical sister, because Isildur doesn't have a sister in actual lore. He has a brother, Anarion. Doesn't have a sister. But yeah, Adar proposes an alliance because they have a common enemy. Adar fears Sauron, and Galadriel is hunting Sauron as well. So let's team up. The elves and the orcs look like they're going to team up. So when you see the fighting going down at Eregion, that we've seen in the trailer, is most likely going to be that alliance trying to go after Sauron. I fucking hate this show. The orcs would not even be marching on Eregion right now anyway. In actual lore, they don't do it until, again, 1697, when Sauron is leading them to Eregion because he wants to get the rings. He's revealed himself as Sauron with the One Ring in 1600, and about 100 years later, he goes for the other remaining rings in Eregion, gets 16 to the 19, can't find the other 3. Celebrimbor won't give it up. Then Sauron tortures and kills him. Well, it's a different actor, so it's like the noticeable difference in the makeup. I guess less scarring, but yeah, it's a different actor. But that's where this episode ends. So basically, again, summation of this boring as fuck lore-breaking episode. The 7 rings for the dwarves are created, not in how it's done in lore. The only thing it gets right about the rings is that they amplify the greed. That's it. You got the member berries with the door of Durin, Durin's door, Westgate, the one that's only revealed in Moonlight because of the Ithilden inlaid in it. That's a member berries element in this episode. The beginning of the creation of the 9 rings you see kind of in this episode. But again, it makes Celebrimbor look callous. It makes him look easily manipulated and stupid because he's easily swayed by Anatar. And it's not like he's basically swayed in that regard, and he's also manipulated in, like, when Antar points out that Celebrimbor lied to Gilgalad, which would have never happened in lore. This is worse than the Halo show, and the reason why it's worse than the Halo show, there's only one fucking positive I can say about the Halo show. There's only one positive thing I can say about the Halo show, and that is, as stupid as the decision was, they created their own timeline. So, like, they created the silver timeline for the Halo series. So whatever happened in the show did not directly impact actual Halo canon. Okay? That's the one fucking positive thing I can say about that shit series. Is the fact that it was its own timeline, its own storyline. That's, like, what I can say positive about that series. This here still likes to claim that is at all faithful to Tolkien. It's not its own timeline or anything like that. They are still maintaining they are being faithful to Tolkien's work within this series. Give me enough alcohol and maybe. Hey Galador, and I'm, like, wrapping up shortly because I, like, got through this episode because there wasn't really much to talk about. As stupid as the lore breaking was in this episode, it was boring as fuck. You managed to take what should be an epic storyline within Middle-earth and you make it boring. How do you fucking do that? They made it boring. And somehow this isn't the worst fucking episode. That goes to episode 4. Because that episode gave me a fucking aneurysm. With how much lore breaking that shit did. Holy fuck. This here is not the worst. But doesn't make it mean it's good either. Yeah, I know. It's according to retards. This is not the best episode. Not even fucking close. Well, I have an article pulled up, possibly for tomorrow. That Screenrant article that comes out and says that apparently Amazon is continuing its plan with their initial plan with 5 seasons for this show, and season 3 is already being filmed. Now, they would have to greenlight seasons 4 and 5, because up to this point, they've only greenlit 3. They've only greenlit 3, which is why I told you guys that at the very least we'll be getting a 3rd season, because that's what the contract calls for. They'd be reneging on the contract if they were to at all cancel this series before the 3rd season was filmed. Because they greenlit for 3. All right. Now, whether it gets a 4 and 5 remains to be seen. So, I wouldn't even call it fan fiction because there's nothing at all that remotely smacks of being a fan in this series. That's, I would say, studio fiction. It is pure bad studio fiction. Because there's been better fanfic, actual fan fiction, that's been written and filmed better by actual fans. And yes, it is not canon. The reason why I tear this series apart is because they still peddle the lie they are being respectful to the actual canon Tolkien created, and they're not. They're still lying through their teeth about that. And you still have the shills and so forth still buying into it and pushing that false narrative. So I'm going to tear this apart and show, no. It's not only really bad, not only is it really bad, it is a affront. It's an affront to Tolkien's memory. Yeah. They kept saying back to the books. I'm like, what books? I mean, I have books. I have books that I can go to. What fucking books are you talking about, showrunners? What books are you talking about? I have like an actual encyclopedia. Look at this artwork. I love it. Like the shiny. But I have actual books. The guy literally read to you why there would not be two Durans at the same time. Because, look, lo and behold, Durin the Deathless not only goes into the actual lore, but the inspiration. I have books. I have this, which shows the appendices that they have the rights to, and shows the actual fucking timeline that they could have used. I have this that was actually written before The Lord of the Rings, but not published until after because the publishers wanted something more like The Hobbit. But this was fucking written before. So Tolkien had it all done. I have books. I also have replica weapons that I cannot exactly show on stream because of YouTube's policies, but I have a replica blade of Anduril. That is the sword that was like forged for Aragorn from the shards of Narsil. I have Dwarven axe. I have Arwen's sword. I have Legolas's blades. And I have an Uruk-hai blade. Can't exactly show that on YouTube because policies don't exactly allow it. But I have those. So not only do I have books, I have weapons. No Weta statues, unfortunately. They're a little too expensive for me to afford, especially right now. But I have that. So I have books I can refer to include histories, like biographies of Tolkien, and inspirations for the locations in Middle Earth, and so forth. That would be pretty awesome. That would be pretty awesome. I would love. Oh, I also have Sting. By the way, I also have Sting. I would love a replica of Glamdring. And for those who do not know what Glamdring is, it's the sword Gandalf wields. It's the sword he finds within the troll horde in The Hobbit. Glamdring, also known as Foehammer. I want that. That sword's pretty cool. But yeah, that's the sword that Gandalf uses. And that's the name of it. So yeah, but there it is. Went a little bit longer than I thought this would go, but that's because I'm pretty much ranting about this shit show. Because this is... I hate this series so much. And that's the end of the episode. That's the end. Like I said, only really two major storylines, if you want to call that the major, happen in this episode, and that's what's happening in Numenor and what's happening with the creation of the Rings of Power. Even though the creation of the Rings of Power is going backwards in terms of the creation, because these 9 and the 7 are created first, then Celebrimbor creates the 3 by himself. Yeah, I watched it. Well, if I wrote this show, I would actually make sure I had the actual rights to Second Age history, because there's for no matter what the shills say, no matter what Amazon claims, it's not just notes Tolkien left. He actually fucking left lore. This is part of the Second Age materials. He left lore. Now, first thing I would do is make absolutely sure I had rights to use this. First off, I would make sure I had rights to use it. Secondly, I would show the actual stories, like I showed you what happened to Finrod, what happens to Celebrimbor. So let me show you the timeline. Sauron choosing Mordor as his hell, and hello, yes, I'm her bitch. Anyway, the timeline. Clip that. Oh, I know I would need a ton of money, but just like give you idea of events that transpire that could be epics if they were to be properly done. All right. Let's see. The founding of Eregion in 750. All right. Then the choosing of Mordor. Like this whole time period, choosing of Mordor transpiring to when Eregion's laid to waste. Basically. The first appearance of the ring wraiths. All right. Basically, it says death of Tar Atanamir, Tar and Kalami. I can't. I am so fucking tired. I cannot pronounce it. And dear God, actually, chat. Not tomorrow. Talk Nerdy to Us will be on Steph. If you're listening, Talk Nerdy to Us will be on my channel at 8:30 p.m. tomorrow. But I was going to say tomorrow, send super chats for wine, because a week from tomorrow, I'll be going to the Renaissance Festival. And the theme is wine, revelry, and romance. They had me at wine. So send super chats for alcohol. All right. But basically, around 2251, you see the about this time, the Nazgul or ring wraiths, slaves of the Nine Rings, first appear. All right, the corrupted nine men. The repentance of Tar Palantir and the usurping of the throne. I'm gonna send you a message tomorrow, just a reminder. It's on my Talk Nerdy to Us is on my channel. But yeah, send super chats for wine, so I can buy wine at the Renfest. Oh, the Assailing of Valinor by Ar-Pharazôn, showing that. Basically, the downfall of Numenor. Okay, show that. The Siege of Eregion, as I showed, and leading into what we see in the Fellowship of the Ring, the beginning, the last alliance of elves and men. Of course, you come in and just say this. Look, if this doesn't work, if what you're claiming doesn't work, then I don't know what's wrong with my chats. Hey, Steeg, I'm wrapping up. This episode was... Oh my God. Hold on, chat. What up, bitch? Hello. Yes. Yes, I know. You're in my chat. Oh my God. You want a freebie. You want, you cheapskate, you want a freebie. I mean, I got I gotta stand up, because I'm short. But I'm doing this. Like, you all better not fucking clip this, all right? I'm talking to you, chat. Because I'm doing this for my bitch here, all right? Because she wants a freebie, all right? Yeah, chat has to pay. She gets a freebie, all right? I can't do it. She wanted a free. She calls me. She wants a freebie. You're lucky I'm not putting you on speakerphone. You're lucky I'm not putting you on speakerphone. So, have you had wine? Yeah, she's reading the chat. I hear her say, wiggle, 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 wiggle. Yes, yes. All right. Well, if you guys don't pay, like, now, like, send super chats tomorrow for wine. All right. I love you too. All right. Right. Bye. Anyway. All right. Like I said, because, like I said, what was I going to say? The Renfest theme is wine, revelry, and romance. So I'm like, send super chats for wine, because I'm going to fucking need it. Oh, sure you didn't. Anyway. All right. Look, I'm just saying, like, because I told Steph to pimp my my channels out, because I'm going to need alcohol at the end of this season. I'm going to need alcohol at the end of this season. It'll be cheaper than therapy. It'll be cheaper than the therapy I'm going to need. No, if I'm either going to possibly purchase like a peasant top to wear, or that kind of like ranger like outfit I have. But I need to get, well, no, probably just a peasant top, because I'd have to get boots and pants if I were to wear like the ranger stuff. So probably my plan is possibly to like get like, just a peasant top, like, one of those like that you'd see at a Renfest. Just because I don't have time, I'm not gonna have time to actually like get what I need. Yeah, she is pimping me out. Anyway, but I do have to wrap it up here, chat, because I've been up since like pretty early. No, not female Link. No, it's kind of like a ranger top with like a hood, like kind of like in D&D. But I've been up since early, so I'm going to call it here. I'd say same time next week, so I'm not conflicting too much with your your guys' pinned down podcast. But most likely the same time next week, 8:30 p.m. I know I'm competing with Saucy Saturdays, but at the same time, it's like if I do it too early, people can't watch it. If I do it too late, I'm gonna be fucking tired. So I'm about 8:30 p.m. Roughly. Thank you, Robert. And so next week will be, I'll try to get a spoiler review video out Friday, because I've been playing with a program called CapCut. And I think I figured out how to split the entire episode into clips, so that way I could have a video looping in the background of my video, essentially, as I'm going through a spoiler review, depending on what happens. Because like I said, this episode really did not warrant a spoiler review, because nothing of real significance fucking happened. I mean, like, there was lore breaking fucking galore, but it was boring as hell, so it would have been pointless almost to do a spoiler review. for this episode. But next episode will be episode 6, and then after that, only 2 more to fucking go. And yeah. And then I'm done for this season, at least. I'm done. So yeah, super chats for alcohol. Much appreciated. But take care, everyone. Have a good rest of your day or evening, wherever you are in the world. And I will see you all tomorrow. For Talk Nerdy to Us on my channel. That's the channel I do with my friend, the one who called me and wanted a freebie boob shake for you guys. So tune into that tomorrow. Talk Nerdy to Us at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Kick and Twitch stream. I dual stream on my Kick and Twitch. I've been playing BioShock 2. I'm going to be playing Resident Evil 7 and other games because of how close it is to the spooky season and Halloween. This coming Wednesday and the following Wednesday are the 1 and 2 streams where Orange Chat and I will be talking the first 2 X-Men movies. And then the following Thursdays will be Wolverine and Logan. And then Friday, I'll figure out what to, gaming stream most likely. And then Saturday evening would be discussing the live stream breakdown for episode 6. So again, thank you everyone. Have a good rest of your day or evening wherever you are in the world. And I'll catch you all tomorrow. Peace.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.